fucking door! 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! I kicked the door down that led to a room. Daddy, please! A young female voice cried from within. I staggered in the room, half fucked up, beer bottle in one hand and a bomb in the other. I took one last swig and threw the bottle into the corner of the room. I looked at her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Stop crying, whore! You're just like your mother! My head was dizzy and my body was out of control. As I got closer to my daughter, I can hear her whispering, Please, please help me. She had her phone under her pillow on her lap. What are you doing? Who is that? My voice deepened and I spoke with more than anger. It was rage. She refused to hand over the phone, so I grasped the bong in my left hand, leaned back and swung it aimlessly, and it cracked her in the skull. Her face was a bloody mess, and her hair was blonde infused with crimson. She bled all over my grandmother's rug. I thought to myself, I know we'll get that out. The fuck's the red wine? I started to sway, and I fell backwards, unconscious. I woke up in a cell. That little bitch must have called the police. Long story short, the judge died and my case was ruled a mistrial. You might think that I was lucky, but I make my own luck. Judge Anderson loved whiskey. Single malt, 12 years old. I'll leave the rest to speculation. My first grade teacher always said I can get away with murder. Turns out, she was right. I'm a free man. A free man with a taste for blood. Turns out, a murdering alcoholic isn't on the top of employers' requirements. Who would have guessed? So, I took work where I could. Manual labor, mostly. A young family's holiday coincided with work that was being done to their 4-bedroom house in Kings Bay. I left the keys with my boss and jetted off to who knows where. Something or other. He told me to check out the house for measurements and to estimate how much vinyl we would need for the flooring. It was a routine request. I thought nothing of it. How was I to know this would be the last drive of my life? Since the mistrial, I had not had a lick of moonshine. I was sober. But there was still a thirst for a new addiction, a thirst that cannot be quenched. I stepped out of my car and walked up a wooden gate. I reached over, unlatched it, and proceeded up the straight path. I stood on the porch and reached into my back pocket and pulled out a set of keys. I put them in the door and turned, but they would not turn. I moaned. Back door it is. As I walked around the side of the house, I saw a shadow in the corner of my eye. I turned to find a man approaching me with a needle in his hand. He put it towards my face. I swung out my hand frantically and knocked it out of his. He dropped the needle. I clenched my other hand into a fist and hurled at his face. He fell backwards. I turned and ran. I threw myself over the fence that led into the woods. I got up and continued to run through the woods. Twigs snapped and leaves crunched at my feet, and among the sounds of the wilderness I could hear him. He was still chasing me. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. I heard every crunch. I got lost in the melody of the leaves, and for one moment, just one, I forgot where I was. Tripped over my own fucking feet, my body tumbled me to the floor. My head crashed off a rock and blood ran into my mouth. Everything beyond me was blurred, and in the midst of the stationary foreground was the outline of a human figure heading toward me. I regained consciousness, back where this all began, my daughter's room. The room was completely white, but I recognized the smell. They say smells are linked with memories. They couldn't be more right. I could see her. She was a child playing with her dollhouse that I had bought for her for Christmas. Time flashed forward. She was a teenager, sitting on her bed listening to a personal CD player she had saved up for. Once again, that image faded and the flashback set in motion. Her death. What started it all, as I watched my actions be replayed, I regretted every moment of it. But I did not regret that I killed her. Oh no. I regret that I got caught. What do you want? I said to the man. Is it sex? If it's not, then why am I naked? Do you get a kick out of seeing other men tied up? As he looked at me, I didn't recognize him. Even without speaking, that look did frighten me. You'll be easier to tidy up this way. You've been a bad man, Richard. How do you know my name? Who the fuck are you? I squirmed, but every time I moved, it seemed to get harder and harder until eventually it was impossible. He continued to look at me. I noticed him blinking, and I focused all my fears on his eyes as he walked around the room. You see, I notice things. I notice things that others do not, Richard. I see evil through the thickest of disguises. He continued to walk around the table where I was tied down. Your judge's death was no coincidence. Was it, Richard? He pressed his finger on my forehead and looked deep into my eyes. Do you even feel any remorse? In my response, I did not make eye contact. Yes! Yes, I do. I'm so sorry. Please, you have to believe me. I told him what he wanted to hear. Liar! Do you think I was born yesterday? If you knew the answer, why did you ask the question? I have a certain code to follow. He then went to the black oval-shaped object, placed it on the table at my feet, and rolled it out. He looked at it and then walked up beside me. He cut my cheek with a sharp knife and drew a drop of blood from the incision. He then placed the blood on a blood film. My new life was running out, so I let out a scream. Help! Somebody! He shoved the cloth into my mouth. Be quiet, nobody can hear you. Do you think I'm stupid? He then went back to the black roll and gently slipped the knife from it. The knife shined in the light and the reflection blinded me for a moment. When I opened my eyes, he was beside me. He took one deep breath, lifted the knife above his head, and in one rapid moment, the knife was inside me. I felt it pierce my flesh, but there was no pain, just